Hello, it's Scott Manley here with episode 54 of Interstellar Quest. We are with the some sort of relative of Zardoz, my next generation spaceplane, which actually takes off from the runway, heads into orbit, and in theory carries a whole bunch of cargo. Except, as you can see, it's having some trouble gaining altitude, so I fire up the nuclear engines a little early, start firing the RCS to bring the nose up, and as slowly and carefully I fight my way to some altitude here. This took about 20 something minutes to get into orbit. The initial design flew really well, but as soon as I started adding cargo to the mix, things didn't quite go to plan, so I was left to use its excessive delta V capabilities just to get itself into orbit, firing those nuclear engines again. There will be a redesign for future versions, no doubt. Now furthermore, once we got up into real altitude, we started to encounter problems with the stability of the vehicle. What happened was we would find that we would have to pull up really hard, deflect the nose a long way off the velocity vector to get the lift we needed to propel ourselves higher, but doing so made the aircraft really hideously unstable, and I pretty much spent 15 minutes fighting this thing like that. It was just a horrific experience, and that was probably the way my voice actually went for real. It was just a horrible situation. This is mostly going to be a post-commentary, because this whole mission took a huge amount of time for a number of reasons which will become apparent. All this time, of course, I'm running the fuel balancer to try and keep the aircraft balanced. There is some problem with fuel flow, but ultimately, at about 20 kilometers, the Sabre engines cut out of air breathing mode and we switched them over to internal rocket mode and started, well, at least we got some real thrust at this altitude. From this point, it was mostly plain sailing, other than the stability problems, which still took some time to repair. But 100 kilometers up, firing our engines, we get ourselves into a 330 kilometer orbit, ready to start our encounter with the orbiting power station. So this is all about maintenance of our wireless power network. It's really going to be critical that we have this network available to us. And of course we stop for a beauty shot so that we can see the sun setting behind Kerbal, and that always looks like a good one, especially as the spacecraft fades into the darkness. Now, Rendezvous was equally challenging because, as you can see, the maneuver node system just couldn't decide which set of close approaches I should be looking at, and it kept flickering back and forth between the purple and the orange and the I'm not quite sure. I totally ended up just guessing my way as to what would be a good encounter. Now, I should point out that in 0.235 there has been a number of improvements to maneuver nodes, but I don't think that these particular borderline close approaches, these weird close approach situations are going to be addressed, so that will remain for a future version. Anyway, after performing the burn, we have our spaceplane on an encounter with the target. We take a moment to look at the planet Kerbal below us, watch the moon set, fly around onto the night side and watch the spacecraft, the space station, come into view. And from this point on, we're in rendezvous mode. We're going to fly past this thing at about 1 kilometer, and we really need to start slowing down. We have nuclear engines, of course, on this thing, so they don't have a huge amount of thrust for this mass, but as I've pointed out before, it's not really about the thrust, but how you use it. You can get anywhere with ion thrusters. So now I've pulled the spacecraft into range here. We're trying to maneuver around to the bottom end. It was hard to tell from a distance, but the area at the top is where the transmitter is. And the transmitter right now is shut down for some reason. I guess there's nobody interested in receiving its bountiful amounts of power. So anyway, now it's back to old me. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, well, just gentlemen, we have arrived in the vicinity of the reactor controls power system satellite thing in orbit over Kerbal. Please open the cargo bay doors as we prepare for docking. So you'll see here that I have a little octagonal strut attached here, octagonal hex thing. What I do is I detach that because it's attached to struts that secure the whole thing in place during flight. Now, I have an Infernal Robotics hinge at one end, but to make the struts disappear, I have to detach a part. It would be really nice, Infernal Robotics guys, if you could have some sort of strut that I could, like, disable when I need to start moving things. Because, yeah, right now, this is, this locking mechanism requires some serious, serious work. I have to throw away something. Regardless, we fold this thing out of the cargo bay. Now, the mission here is to retrofit on new cooling hardware onto this space station here. I've been following its progress, and while it has an exceptionally large and well-maintained reactor on it, it is struggling to generate nearly as much power as the ground-based stations, largely because it is unable to generate a sufficiently high thermal gradient, right? Now, anybody that knows about thermodynamics will understand that you can't directly get power from heat, right? To get power from heat, what you actually need is a thermal gradient. You need a hot place and a cold place, and as the heat flows from the hot place to the cold place through some sort of power generating device, that's how you get power out. And generally, the steeper that thermal gradient, the more efficient, the more power you can get out of it as it flows through. So, an example is actually a thermocouple, which is essentially, two different types of metal where you have a hot plate and you have a cold place, and you're wanting to measure the temperature of the hot item. So that is a temperature sensor, but the same principle is used in radiothermal generators, right? Where you have the radioactive heat source in the middle, and then you have all these radiator fins. And as the heat flows out, it drives an electric current, which is used to power the spacecraft. Now, a less obvious example is, say, a steam turbine. You have super hot steam going in at high pressure, and then as it expands, it cools down, but as it's expanding, it's driving an engine. So the steam coming out of a steam engine is cooler because the energy has gone into moving the engine. Anyway, I'm going to try and fly this thing and get it docked here. It is awful, to be honest. First of all, I noticed that the space station does not have any... does not have these things open. I should probably open them. Where are we? Open the shield. And we'll just open all of these because honestly I don't know which one I'm going to dock on. But it's probably one of these ones. Come on. Open shield. Yes. Okay. Now. Oh my god. What's going on here? Oh, look. We appear to have invented a space tuning fork that runs at about 0.5 hertz. Bing. Oh wow. This is awful. Oh, crap. Okay. My stability control system appears to be inducing an oscillation, which is what is worse. Okay, let's try and stop this. I'm going to try and stop it manually. Okay, I think I'm suppressing this. Oh, crap. Okay. Hopefully that won't happen again, because I do not want to dock a spacecraft that is like a giant tuning fork. Okay, let's control from here, because that's the thing we're going to have to dock with. Okay, got ourselves some control back. Set that thing as target again, and we'll try and get over there ever so carefully. Okay, now let's try rotating the spacecraft. We have our stability control system enabled, and it is wobbling. No! This thing just wants to wobble. Look at the docking alignment indicator. No! No, this is not good. This is not good. Ah, crap. What am I going to do here? So, okay, turn it off. Yeah, okay. So it appears that every time I have ASAS on, it is causing an instability. It's causing an oscillation. And indeed, old me did have some serious problems with flying that thing. Even though it has Kerbal joint reinforcement, you can see this thing oscillating like an insane thing at 4 times regular speed. So I folded away all that stuff because I figured that this was very likely going to hit the space station. By firing up RCS, I pretty much tried to learn to fly this thing without ASAS, because ASAS is gonna cause any oscillation in it. The problem is that as soon as I turned, it would generate oscillations which would actually disguise the real motion. If I tried to translate, it would introduce more rotations. It was just awful trying to manually fly this thing. Once again, it was like playing a piano, but it's like playing a piano which is wobbling. It's like playing a piano where your fingers are made of jelly. right? So you try and push the key and your finger would kind of flop around, and it wouldn't necessarily respond in time or in any way you'd expect. And you're trying to just compensate for this. I spent about, a good 20 plus minutes just trying to learn to keep this thing under control. Once I got it under control, it was a case of just being incredibly gentle and moving this so slowly it would have driven you guys crazy if you had to watch me, because it just took so long. And every now and then I would attempt to correct something, and the thing would wobble and go in the opposite direction. It was just like that unstable, or that horrific. Thankfully, I didn't have, at least, I wasn't having to deal with the translation being incorrect. At least the control system was aligned with the docking port on the payload. If I'd had to eyeball that thing, I think I would have just killed myself. It would have I was literally sweating the whole time. But over time, you see, I did very gently get this thing into position. And with a bit of work, we were able to move it, finagle it, adjust it, and keep the whole thing roughly under control. There was, slight rotations, which I wasn't really good at keeping the rotations under control because they were considered of secondary importance to, actually docking the spacecraft. You see me setting up another random oscillation here. Now, even although this is running at 4 times regular speed, I will point out that this docking speed is roughly the same speed the space shuttle actually docked with the space station. So it's not, this is actually a more realistic representation than compared to the kind of speed that we get up to in Kerbal's space program. We are, rather reckless, let's say, compared to reality when we are performing these things. We're moving at about 2 inches per second, and when you've got something the mass of the space shuttle docking with a space station, that was quite a serious bump, I'd imagine. But we get in close, and it's back to old me. Okay, 1.5 meters out from this final docking. I am going to need a serious beer after this. Although it is technically just before work right now, so I probably shouldn't have a beer. But, man, I deserve one. Come on. 1.4 meters. It's 1.3. Ever so carefully, just try to keep the oscillations suppressed. Wait for the magnetic force. Can you feel the force? I want to feel the force. I want to feel the force pulling me in. Yes! Oh, brilliant, brilliant. Oh my god, that was the worst and best docking I've ever had to do. It could only have been made worse had the target been rotating. It was just utterly horrific. I think I'm going to have to redesign this shuttle in more ways than one. This shuttle needs serious redesigns. I'm sorry. I think I shall call you bastard child of Zardoz, because you are not the love that I had for my previous Zardoz space planes. Anyway, we need to start tooling up. We need to start performing our mission here. So, okay, we gotta find. There's my life support container, and we have tons of life support on this spacecraft to transfer over. As it happened, that docking took a long time, but we didn't really cut that much into our life support supplies. We have the life support kind of attached there at the front of this bay here. Okay, we got lots of little ones though, but that'll be nice to give them this. We'll be sending another space plane up in a week, but hopefully it will be a redesigned space plane. Okay, time to undock and say goodbye. Fare thee well. May your trip around Kerbal continue with great power generation and things like that. Okay, now time to fire up those reaction control thrusters and get ourselves out of here. Ever so gently. Ever so gently. We do not want to knock those radiators off, because those radiators have a history of breaking off randomly. This is going to be pretty cluttered in here when those are actually deployed, but honestly, we really need that thermal gradient. We need the power to flow a bit faster, a bit more efficiently. Okay, we are now getting clear. Bill, Jebediah, and Bob have successfully performed their mission. And Jebediah, I think after that, is pretty tired. He'll be probably let Bill or Bob fly it home instead. Meanwhile, we have to actually start performing some maintenance here. So I should have done this earlier, but really I want to shut down this reactor for a few days to just to make sure that I've refueled it and everything correctly. But it's not needed for a little while, so this is a good time for us to do it. So of course the only way to shut down reactors is to do it manually, which means flying out over the surface of this wonderful looking space station against a picturesque looking Kerbal down there with magnificent clouds. And I hear that there's a new version of the cloud, the beautification mod coming out, which will include volumetric clouds, which will no doubt bring people's graphics cards to their knees, but I am interested in trying them when it does appear. Okay, ever so gently get close to this thing and make sure we don't want to spend too much time near it, because radiation is all about exposure. Manual shutdown, excellent. Okay, now we can get out of there. Radiation safety is largely about keeping your distance and reducing your exposure time, although for some radiation sources time simply isn't enough, such as the famous Demon Core incidents that killed a few people. Anyway, old me had a great time talking about Demon Cores, while he also had to unfold all these radiators manually. Now we're only adding like 12 of these radial radiators, but the core is attached to inline radiators. This is a pure exhibit moment. Hey, I hear you like radiators, so I put some radiators on your radiators so you could radiate while you radiate. I think I need his voice to really make that happen. Well, anyway, now we have to, of course, return the spacecraft. The reactor is powered down and the crew have a few days to... it has to go for 3 days before they can refuel it. But the crew get to try and return to Kerbal, and they're going to have to make a deorbit burn more or less along the Terminator because they wanted to wait 3 or 4 hours until the Kerbal spaceport came, before it was dawn there. They want to land during the day. And much was to be done there. We have to close everything down here, stow the docking stuff for landing, close the cargo bay doors to shield them against the rigors of re-entry, although Jeb suggested they put some barbecue in there and have it cooked during the re-entry. But we, of course, get a nice little view of the sun rising during re-entry. We start making our turns. We start turning left, we start turning right, and re-entry itself was rather an easy experience, more or less. The spacecraft just does not perform well in terms of turns at high velocities. This is me working as hard as I can to actually turn this thing to turn back because I'm totally missing the spaceport. But it doesn't matter really because it has the Sabre engine and it has a ton of fuel. So at least once I am able to turn it around, I can fire up the engine. Obviously the turn is partly as well to... provide braking force as well. But yeah, about 100 kilometers I overshot, which meant that I was more or less having to fly this back for... Well, it flies about 300 meters per second, so it took about 5 minutes to fly this back to the Kerbal spaceport. We could have gone to the island runway, but pretty much I think that's just good for... There's nothing there that we want to take it to. We want to go to the real runway. It's bigger and longer and more suited for a successful vehicle like this, although it will have to be re-engineered. As I said, Bill Kerman is taking the controls because Jeb, really, he worked extremely hard on that docking experience and needs to relax a little for once. So yeah, Bill Kerman sitting at the controls, making sure that everything is running fine. Lined up perfectly for the runway. This is surely going to be a great landing. So, back to old me. Okay, so just keeping the engines throttled just a little here. We don't want to stall into the ocean. And this landing, once again, come in far too shallowly. But honestly, I don't mind so much, because I always have trouble bleeding off the speed. I figure a low, slow landing is much more reliable. Okay, now the engines are just really low here. The engines are practically not on. We've just got... It shows a little bit. I think it's generating thrust. Okay, just make sure we line ourselves up over the runway, and we're getting stuttering as the thing is loading models here. Okay, now we're nice and close, and we're going to land really close to the end of the runway here. Not too fast, and... Oh, what the heck? Wait, what happened to my space plane? Oh man, I knew I had to re-engineer it, but I didn't think I would have to re-engineer it that much. That is, well, yeah, I guess we definitely have to rebuild the thing completely. But thankfully, the crew has survived. And Jebediah seems to be quite happy with his situation. There is the rest of the spacecraft. Come on, don't break. We need to rebuild you. Hey, okay. What's left? What's left? Let the smoke clear. What do I have left to work? I think there's there's the core of the spacecraft there. When the Kerbal Air Investigator Board arrived on the scene, they immediately looked for the cause of the unfortunate landing. And answers came very quickly. They forgot to lower the landing gear. So an otherwise successful mission, which performed a docking under unheard of circumstances, was, well, looked rather terrible because of this landing. Well, I hope they'll have that thing fixed for the next launch. Until then, I'm Scott Manley. Fly safe.